Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtrothi, and this is the Eve Universe show's continued coverage of the CSM 17, this time with Agondray. How's it going, Agondray?
I'm doing good. How about yourself, Ash?
I am doing great. It's an early day for me, but that's good because you have a pretty spotty internet, and you're in a very off time zone, so we got to do this and hope for the best. So we're gonna hang through it with me or with it, and I do appreciate you coming on in spite of all of the challenges.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah. So, as I say with a lot of candidates, there are some candidates I know really well. There are some candidates I don't know very well. You definitely would fit into the latter. However, I've gone through your well. First of all, when CCP talked about you on your during the big live stream, that got my attention, and I knew I wanted to talk to you. And then when reading through your CSM post, I found it fascinating because I I really like you. I feel like I agree with you, or I like your the way you think, but at the same time, I would like to push back on several of your final conclusions, and maybe we'll be able to explore these topics, and I'll be persuaded. But let's just jump into this. What do you do in Eve? Who are you, Agondray?
Well, I started in 2005. This November will mark 17 years. And since I have moved to West Africa, I have become strictly an industrialist and miner in all my time.
Okay.
What I do, uh, I went to a single player corporation years ago due to AWOXing. And since then, I just drift around and I find new corporations. I get into their community. I help them out. I teach them the game and set them up. And then once they have declared themselves independent and they run off and do their own thing, I go and I find another area to drift into.
How successful have you been in that? Because I have found, at least like when I did my wanderings, not like I wasn't experienced back then, but like I found that just joining different random corps, you found basically nothing there, right? Like, so how successful have you been in joining corps and getting them functional?
I joined one Mimitar Corp just a couple years ago. I got into the group. I pulled new guys from the public areas where they were just out doing their own thing. They were lost. I got them to come into the group, join the corporation. I taught them how to do industry because that's what they wanted to do. I
Right.
taught them how to mine. We moved into a wormhole for a while. We pulled in more people. And eventually, the CEO went AWOL. So the corporation collapsed. But the survivors stood back up in a new corporation, and I'm still with them in the acknowledgement pub. And I have recently joined another community called Dam Fam, and all together we're just this big industrial machine of new people coming in, constantly building up our numbers, and we're pumping out various projects all over the place between all of us.
So you're two for two, or have you found a lot of groups that were beyond salvation?
I have joined a bunch of groups in the past. One group was ran by a character named Daisy Noacha, and it got very big. We had 80 people, but due to the CEO just blowing her seals, the whole group collapsed and everyone went their way. I've been in a lot of other small groups to where they just reached that point of independency and they didn't really need my help anymore.
Right.
So they flew the nest, and I went searching for a new group to start that building process with them, trying to help new players stay in the game and just building those organizations up.
So it sounds like the common X factor here is the CEO, right? So why not just make your own group?
Uh, I thought about it. My problem with my
What?
Yes, I'm not a recruiter type.
So can you start over?
My problem with starting my own group is I'm not a recruiting type of person. Even though I do end up picking a person here and there because I'm like, hey, come play with me. I'll show you how to do this better. I
Mm-hmm.
can't really get numbers before people eventually go inactive inside the corporations.
Right, but I mean, you've stood up these different groups. Like when a CEO goes AWOL, why not just step in and be like, "All right, this is my corp now."
I actually tried to do that
Mm-hmm.
with our Mimitar corporation, but because of the way our leadership was, our little council, it was this is the CEO's corporation, even though I did have a character in the corporation and I was director and second in command. Uh, they did not feel right just taking over that corporation
Right.
because it was the CEO's corporation. So
Fair
everyone
enough.
just left and reformed the acknowledgement.
Right, but why weren't you the CEO of that reformation? Well, you get what I'm saying? Like you could just have a
Oh yeah,
recruiter if
yeah.
that's your problem. Is there a reason why you've chosen to not be the cornerstone and just allowed other people to be the cornerstone, successful or not?
Originally, what was going to happen is the corporation wasn't going to reform because a lot of people went inactive after that. And then some people started coming back, and one of our other directors decided, who I constantly contact with, he decided he was going to stand up that group. So I let him do it, and I've been constantly flying with them, except for when they require communications. And I pulled people in to join their corporation, and we just still all play together. And they still can do their own thing in areas where I cannot operate.
Right. Okay. So, for the same reason why you can't be super active, or for the same reasons that you can only do mining and industry, you can't necessarily be the guy because you can't do all of the things that the guy needs to do.
Right.
Yeah,
Last week, I spent almost 5 days offline with only a few hours online a day due to connection problems.
sure. Makes sense. I appreciate both your drive to like help make these things work and also your acknowledgement of your weaknesses, and thus the need to do the far harder path of find somebody. You know, if you want the job done right, you got to do it yourself. Well, you can't do it yourself, so you got to figure out somebody else that can do the job right, which is far bigger challenge, right? But potentially more rewarding. It says here, so like you have a long history, 11 years in the U.S. Army, correct?
That is correct.
What was your MOS?
I was originally a 15 Papa, which is a flight operations specialist. I was the guy in charge of all the pilot's paperwork, the aircraft paperwork, and just general flight tracking. But that ended up changing 3 years later.
Fixed wing?
Helicopters. I
Okay,
started off in a Huey detachment.
right. Okay, good. That makes more sense. I was like, yeah, but right. Okay, I was a 19 Delta.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So I was just wondering because like I know that there are a lot of military people in Eve and ex-military, and that both there is something about Eve that attracts people in the military, and there's something about military people that make them effective at Eve. Um, but yeah. So, but you joined in 2005, which is like the long ago. You were there for the what the books are written about, as it were. Is that right?
Yes, I enjoyed those days. I remember back then, Exodus just recently came out, the Exodus expansion.
Whew. Yeah, that's before my time by a few years. Uh, all right. Well, so I guess first and foremost, there's a lot of people that claim like that they want to like an Eve classic, that things were better before. You've seen it all. Is there a better time? Like, is there a time period that you would consider to be when Eve was functioning the best?
I probably say I miss around the 2012 to 2015 timeline. At one point, we could have up to over 50,000 people online at peak server times. It was an amazing time, but people just got tired of the game changes, tired of the status quo, and they just slowly trickled off.
It's true. Especially like 2014, which we see as being like this. We celebrate the community, but the time in which they were the most focused on the community, it starts with BTAC-R and ends with like the I Was There trailer, actually sees one of the biggest downturns in our player base. But I mean, like, mechanically, is there was there something about that time period that made the game better, or was it just popularity? Is the difference a social difference or a mechanical difference?
I think I would say it was a combination. Most of it would be mechanical because during that time, from 2005 to before 2016, we had amazing content releases. We used to get content 6 months, and then that changed to shorter durations, so eventually quadrants.
Right. It went from
And
it went from 2 expansions to a release every 6 weeks with no expansions under Seagull. That was the rapid deployment system. And then we went to quadrants, and then we went into limbo, and now we're apparently going back into expansions.
I'm not so sure on going back into expansions yet. I mean, from what FanFest has showed, we're doing tweaking to this system, but they haven't released like any actual meat.
Well, they
I'm all
said
for
expansion in
faction warfare
Q4.
getting. What's that?
They said expansion Q4.
They have declared expansions tweaks before too,
That's
which is
fair. I
a
mean,
problem.
yes, there. I mean, like, there have been lackluster expansions. Tyrannus exists, but or yeah, wait, was it Tyrannus? Whatever, the
I
one
think
that with
Tyrannus was a
PI.
wormhole.
PI, my bad. No, that's Apocrypha. I know that one for sure. Uh, because that event is known as the Apocrypha event. Any rate, so I'm not saying that necessarily this expansion is going to be like crazy, although I believe that there are hints that they are. My point was just that the systems, the structure by which CCP is using is now transitioning back to that, supposedly. But so you think that, but you do think that the expansion system is the correct system to be using. Is that pretty much what you were saying?
Yeah, players definitely need something to look forward to, even if there has to be some kind of adjustment because a lot of players are just tired of the status quo. We spent two
Right.
years being told, "Hey, wait till scarcity is over. Hey, wait, the fan fest is over."
Do you think scarcity is over?
We were told by CCP in January that we will not be making any more movements away from scarcity, even though they told us in November, "Hey, welcome to prosperity." 2 months later, yeah, we're not taking any more steps from scarcity.
Right. So, do you feel like the scarcity phase is over?
No, not at all.
What would it take for you to be like, yes, scarcity is over?
They're still in the process. We did some rollback on the ships that will lower prices and get ships back out there
Mm-hmm.
because it did not perform the way it wanted. Um, One of the things I advocate for that I'm going for is mining. Our belts, I'm fine. I'm fine with our belts being tiered throughout the different areas of space, but the belts are still the rocks are pebbles,
Right.
if you know what I mean.
Right. I remember that when I first joined the game, like, one of the things about joining nullsec, like, when you join nullsec, first of all, you're impressed by how amazingly easy it is to make money through ratting, but then you're also amazed by how huge the rocks are. I remember that being a very distinct thing. Like, people are like, "Oh my god, that Spodmane rock," compared to like what you see in high sec or low sec. So you're saying it's not that way anymore.
No, visually the rocks still look large, but you'll devour like a very large Veldspar rock in a system that's never mined, and it's 5,000 M3. I have been out to Nullsec, where I lived in some of the regions out there. There's entire regions without any asteroid belts. If they do have an asteroid belt, they were replaced by pyros. I went to another region over by by the Wildlands region,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually had a small amount, but only 2 of our systems had rocks, and they had some nullsec ore, but that was the extent of the mining.
Right. I'm becoming increasingly curious as to how the Angels managed to build any ships without having any rocks. So what you're suggesting is that they should put the rocks back, but not necessarily remingle the minerals, but just like if there's going to be nullsec rocks, then there needs to be nullsec rocks. Is that pretty much your message there?
Yes, there needs to be rocks in all sectors of space if they expect miners to go there. I have even been in low sec where there's no rocks in the belts. Even if you get there right after downtime, there's just nothing because it was all deleted in the scarcity.
Right. Well, the belts that were deleted, the belts who had all of their rocks deleted were then subsequently deleted, which is why they had to put the rats on the gates, because then there were no belt rats to kill in like angel space at all. So you couldn't officer rat. So, yeah, it's a compounding issue. I guess my concern is that like I assume that there's a part of this balance that is the high sec versus null sec versus low sec or availability, right? So if you just put more null sec rock out there, that may glut that material, right?
Yeah, I'm not asking for 100% of the sizes of rocks that we used to have. Right now, we're only at 20%.
Right.
Scarcity took 90% of our rock, and then for prosperity, we got 10% back.
Yeah, they
Because
doubled
that
it
was
from
the
10 to
whole,
20.
they doubled 10%.
And let's call it 60 to 80. So, 16 to 18% because a certain percentage of it is going to be eaten up by waste.
Yeah, I'm not going to go there with waste.
Fair
Me
enough.
and waste are not friends.
I'm just, yeah. I agree that waste doesn't, or I believe that waste doesn't completely negate the prosperity additions, but it is worth calculating in there. Either way. Yeah, it's a good point. And I've said this before, is that like doubling it after reducing it by so much isn't actually as good as you would think it is. But at the same time, I think it's pretty safe to say that we shouldn't go back to the levels that we were before. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. And one of the things that I've been musing about is how much would be fixed now just by the rock wall being nerfed, right? With that input being taken in. It might be worth having those rocks out there if people like aren't going to be mining it all the way. Like you could raise up the number of rocks in low sec and it didn't actually increase the amount of isogen out there very much because people weren't not mining rocks in low sec because they were not there, or not just because of that. A lot of it was because it's just really fucking dangerous too.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you've been part of this game for a long time. You've helped out corporations kind of stand up. You've done all this stuff in the game since 2005. Have you been playing nonstop since then?
Yes, I have. I have. Yeah.
So dedicated that you continue to play in spite of the fact that you have to use carrier pigeons in order to do your internet connection. That's, I mean, like, it's funny because we talk about adapt or die. Like, you killed your own play styles, and yet, you're a good example of, like, I'm going to play Eve even if I have to, play a totally different aspect of the game based on my limitations. So, like, that's a lot of good stuff going for you. What makes it such that you've now crossed a threshold to wanting to be on the CSM? What led to that?
In the military, I used to do a lot of briefing and debriefing with colonels, battalion commanders, company commanders, even a general.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to tell them no, sir, this isn't going to work the way you think it is going to work. But if we do it this way, we have these options to do this operation. One of my jobs I got in was tactical operations. So you should know your warrants in there. And that got into really intelligence heavy stuff. And constantly telling my commanders, my battalion commander, exactly what is best that we do with our aircraft. And it's kind of the same thing with the CSM, is we need to take in all the data that CCP wants and our player base wants, and we need to explore all possible options and not just say no or go all ham on something else.
I actually really like that. So a lot of times when we talk about the CSM, you know, the language that we use is almost like it's a senatorial body. And then somebody inevitably reminds everybody that the CSM has no real power. And, you know, we go back and around and forth with this. But really what it is that, like, ultimately the CSM has persuasive power, right? And so the skill set of being the person whose job it is to talk to senior level military commanders. I feel like that is about as close as you can get to the mixture of both expertise and complete lack of authority that you get from being on the CSM, right? Like, I mean, I can definitely see how you would pull a parallel, right? You have absolutely no power, but you know the real answer, and you know that they might not know the real answer, and yet they have all of the power, and they know it, and they don't necessarily respect you. And so how do you communicate to that group of people in a way that prevents everybody from getting into a disaster? Does that accurately reflect what you're trying to say?
Yeah, exactly. Because there's just times where I've almost been court-martialed, even though I very calmly have stated, "No, sir, that will not work."
Yeah, they don't like that.
There's a lot of leadership out there that do not like anyone that isn't a yes man,
Mm-hmm.
and it is that threshold you have to cross to not be a yes man, but at the same time you have to walk the line and not be completely insubordinate.
So that actually brings up an interesting question. You've been part of these organizations and standing them up. As we were setting things up, I noticed that your alliance logo is still defaulted. You said you're in a one-man corp, one-man alliance. What's going on with you now? What master do you serve?
Well, currently right now I work with the Acknowledgement Society. You can find us in Acnopub, and it is just a group of new guys that are slowly building up. We have stood up several stations in nullsec where the guys now operate, and I provide them with advice from the high sec where I'm operating because of my lack of ability to operate in nullsec or wormholes. Because many times I'll disconnect and my ship just sits there.
Mm.
I'll log in 20 minutes later, my ship is still sitting there in the open.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, and I've partnered them up with DamFam, and now we run a combined wormhole and high sec set of operations in industry and mining. And they also do a bit of PvP, which I help revise their fits, give them more options. I got them into running epic arcs, but they no longer run epic arcs in battleships now. We're now doing them in frigates and Logi frigates.
Very cool. All right. Sorry, I'm also looking over your bullet points. You let's go back to the idea of like the expansions, okay? Because you're saying solid direction for a game with expansions. That what is it? Where is it? Having something to do for each sector of space and not some database changes. So when we're talking about like the allegiance system, the frontline system, the heraldry system, like maybe not all of that's going to come in the winter expansion. Hopefully some of it's going to come before, but like that to me sounds like as big of an expansion as many. I mean, maybe not Apocrypha, but like, you know, definitely. I mean, like that's bigger than Inferno.
Yeah, I was not there at FanFest, um, but I do not know the content of all that is to come. A lot of it, even on the stream, was kept under wraps.
Yeah.
Even though they covered some, it was, well, we think we're going to do this. It's nothing that's solid. What I would like to see is if we do an expansion, have something for the guys in high sec, something for the guys in low sec, something for the guys in null sec, or do a round robin with expansions. One expansion hit null sec, one expansion hit the low sec guys. Next expansion, do a wormhole. Let all these sections of players know, they matter. Here's some content for you guys to do that's not decade old. Uh, Here's a little bit of something. Because database tweaks are good too, if they're the right kind of tweaks. And that is also dependent on what the subject is, what the rebalance is. We've been doing rebalance for over 10 years now, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I mean, like, Tyricide technically started 11 years ago, I think. So, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good play. I mean, technically, Tyricide's not over. Uh-oh. I didn't lose you, did I?
No, I'm
Okay.
still here. Yeah, I agree. Tierside is not completely over. Uh,
So,
shoot,
so,
hacks have been a meta for several years now.
so it sounds to me like, it sounds like what CCP has been talking about could be an expansion to your standard, but um, they have to deliver on it, and also you have to read into it the stuff about how there's going to be things for other people, other places, but it's just going to come in through the context of the empires. The allegiance system extends beyond faction warfare. I think that it almost was a mistake to communicate it as faction warfare, because that comes with the preconceived notion of what faction warfare is now, as opposed to working for the factions and everything that entails, which is kind of the direction that they seem to be more going. So I do appreciate that you're basically saying that a faction warfare revamp, as it would be, like as a standard just faction warfare revamp, would be not enough. But it would make a decent theme, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the faction warfare guys have been dying for years. Even the space I live right now by faction warfare space, so there's some of our industrial customers, and a lot of kills that come out of there are just people with unfitted ships.
Yeah. What about the arc system? Do you like the idea that the universe will be doing things, and that our interactions with the universe is going to like play into the story, and that's how we're going to learn about new things that are coming diegetically as the story unfolds? Or do you think that that's misguided?
I think that's extremely misguided. Because if anything, I can see the Trig expansion as being part of one of those arcs. That was them testing an arc deal.
Yeah,
And regardless of what the players did, the Trigs were going to take 27 systems. It's a matter of what systems they were going to take.
I disagree. I mean, every single system on Serenity went to Edencom. So if the player base here had been more like the player base on Serenity, we would have fortressed everything.
Mm. I've seen opinions where someone found out that it was scripted. I think it was from a current CSM that the systems were scripted or something like that.
There was an AI controller that was deciding what to attack and when. But
But
I see
pers-
what I see what, like let's just agree that the invasion system, it would be impractical to have thought about it. It was a pretty safe assumption that 27 systems out of 100 or whatever it was would be taken. That's I'm not even going to begin to argue that point. So that's fair. But I think that one of the things about the announcement was more of a statement of correction of that. CCP apologized about the way that they handled lead income, and it sounded like one of the things they stressed was about how our choices are going to matter, that it may delay or advance certain technology, or maybe one of the empires' technology will come out first, or something might be able to be disrupted, because I agree that that was a missing piece, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that can't be an added piece moving forward, right?
True. I do like lore personally. I like all of our past lore that we built up over the years, all the lore that the game was built on, including the books. What I feel they shouldn't do with the arcs is purposely shove people into doing them, because, like with the Trig invasions, I got to where I couldn't go anywhere because I got so surrounded by Trigs, I couldn't get past the gate camps.
Yeah. Yeah. There were definitely things about the Trig invasion that were done that could have been done better and are still not as great as it could be. Absolutely. I do also agree that, like, it's difficult to envision going into the next plot while the previous plot is still left in kind of a bit of shambles. But you said that you're interested in the story actually mattering in general, though. It's just there's a lot. It's fraught with risk. Is that fair?
Yeah, go with something like the Mimitar arc that we did,
The Mimitar arc.
where we got to do dedicated to that tribe.
Yeah, the
That was a
Liberation Day
brand new
event.
station.
Yep, yep, yep.
Yes.
Yeah, that is actually, I think, a good example of the kind of thing. I mean, that was actually an experiment for the kind of thing that they're looking into doing. And I also think that they're going to be doing that. I mean, they're going to be doing that again this year for Liberation Day. It'll be interesting to see if we can expand that out. I mean, like, they folded it into Crimson Harvest last year. You had to choose whether or not you wanted to work for the Blood Raiders or for the um, Temple guys, the Fanatics. You know, the Order of Saint Tetramon. That's the ones. And then
Oh
and
yeah, I remember that one.
there was the Smugglers versus the Sorrow guys in the latest event. So and I remember even during the hunt, which was tied to the new compression technology, CCP at least mused the idea of what would happen if people didn't turn in the scientists, and that delayed the compression technology being released because it takes or longer to invent it if all of their scientists gets kidnapped and not come back. So that seems to be kind of the things that they're experimenting with now. And I think that they've learned their lesson from things like the Stargate event, where people felt that it should have had a choice, but it didn't. Um, so one of the things that I was curious about, based on what you said down here, um, you said mining or rebalance bring asteroid belts back that were deleted completely and less rocks, more ore in each for a neutral balance. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I'm keying off of the phrase neutral balance. And earlier you refer to yourself as being unbiased. I can't help but let that be a red flag, right? Like, it sounds to me like giving nullsec more ore is neutral. Is that neutral?
Well, it's not just nullsec; it's also lowsec. It's also Empire, because even though Empires didn't lose belts as far as what I've seen, it's pebbles to go mine. Whereas lowsec and nullsec, they've got whole areas just empty. The belts are there. You can warp to the location, but there's nothing at any point of the day.
Fair. Okay. Got it. I guess that makes sense. Industry, you say don't make it more complex and expensive via overcomplication. So, what is wrong with industry being a complex system?
Well, it was the addition of all the trig equipment that just severely increased all the ship prices that it went into. Uh, it caused
I'm
a
sorry.
lot of issues.
What trig equipment?
We the build components for battleships,
Right.
the safety seals, and all that.
I see. You're calling it that because it was justified because of the Triglavians. But the R4 reactionables materials is what
Right.
you're talking about. Got it. Tracking.
Right. Because some of the storyline for those parts is actually because of the trigs
Yeah.
and their environments, we need these safety seals, we need core temperature regulators.
I'm not used to people
So
coming to me with the lore justification. That's all. I thought you meant like it took lore trig components. I'm like, what? Okay, but no, you are correct that the justification for all those things were because of the Triglavian threat and other things that they've needed to harden their systems, and that's what these things are. Um, but again, what's the actual problem with them?
they multiplied the ship cost. Uh, the people I know that were building the ships when the whole system changed over a year ago, they're using mini alts to justify all the 7 reactions we got to do.
Right.
They've got alts just producing just the components, and then finally they have their main builders doing the actual ship. And on top of that, unless you build from absolutely everything, usually the resources sold more for it than the ship because of our stocks. And our stocks were hard to sell because of people just parking their ships. Well, this ship is now too expensive for me to do anything with to risk. I'm just going to park it instead of attempt to lose it.
Right. But I guess so. I keep thinking about games like Factorio, Satisfactory, any of
Yeah, I'm
Zachtronics games.
satisfactory.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like people that want to build things in general tend to actually like complex systems that are about learning the system and then building deeper and better efficiencies within it, be it load balancing or compression of size or whatever kind of efficiencies you can get into. Um, Given the fact that all of this advanced stuff was added to battleships and beyond, as well as faction stuff, like, doesn't it make sense that that stuff be a step above? Like, if you want to do simple stuff, you can make battle cruisers and below. If you want to do, then there's the more complex system, but it all uses R4 reactionables, which would be the battleships and capitals and some of the faction stuff. But then T2 is the same thing, but all different kinds of reactionables. So now you've got this gradiated scale of complexity. Is that a problem at all, or is it simply like the difference in prices has a lot to do with like the market and how slow it is to adjust and whether or not the R4s are being extracted fast enough and whether or not it's a pain in the butt to actually react the reactables because the people that are mining the R4 aren't mining it in a place that can react it. There's a lot of reasons why it's more expensive, but like in the end, isn't the complex puzzle make it more interesting?
Yeah, definitely. The complex puzzle makes it more interesting, but we got to do it in a way that it doesn't overinflate the cost to where either people quit buying and just park their ships,
Right.
or the materials cost more than the ship.
Yeah.
Because if I'm going to make a ship or a component, why am I going to make it and sell it for less unless I'm somewhere remote? And if I'm going to produce a battleship that sells for 300 million, but to produce that battleship, it takes me 330 million in components and materials.
Right. I think that there's a few things that were happening at the same time. One, they were quote unquote trying to reduce stockpiles. Two, they were trying to soft cap the construction of capitals in particular. Um, and then three, they were trying to build in a new system. So that's why I'm trying to kind of divorce these sorts of things from each other. The present market situation versus the long-term system, right?
Right, which is another issue. Our Eve is a player-driven market, but if players don't see a price tag worthy enough to risk that ship, they're just going to park the ship instead of risking it, and when they lose it, that stock level goes down. If they don't lose the
Right.
ship, the stock doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, that is, of course, the complicated part. I'm looking at the Abaddon prices, and it's gone back to 270. So it's not like they did say it was going to go up a little bit, but they also buffed it, quote unquote, to compensate. The faction stuff. Let's actually see. Um, like I agree very much with the. Oh, I guess Material's still pretty high. Yeah, faction and capitals were certainly hit pretty hard, but I honestly think that the battleship situation gets a pretty bad rap because A, it's not a basic thing. Like people act like new bros are building battleships, and B, it's the battleship part is not that complicated. I sometimes am concerned that people that are unhappy about the capital ship prices, which were also soft capped, are using the battleship as their argument. So
Yeah, I was producing battleships as well, and
mhm,
even then, before the changes, it was hard to pull a profit on just mining minerals. And
right,
after adding in the parts, I was even more in the hole. And it's like, well, I'll just sell my moon goo and the minerals, and I'll make more than selling the battleship, unless I really need. If I'm in a remote location, like I like to live on islands, I'll build out there.
right. But no man is an island. No. Okay. So it's not the overcomplication that's the problem. It really is the expense. And so if you're going to make things more complex, it would have been better to do it in a gradual method that would have allowed the market to compensate without having a massive change in price. Is that what you're suggesting?
Right. Before the change, battleships were not that expensive. 120, 130, 140 million, and then they tripled in price. They're 300, 330 million, and people are just like, I'm not going to use this for PvP anymore when this other ship can do the same job.
Yeah, I think, but I see this as being kind of like getting the full value of the player driven market, right? Because like they aren't setting the price, they're just creating conditions. And then the market reacts to those conditions. It spikes up and that makes people want to mine the R4 and actually figure out how to do reactions. That makes those new, there's new avenues. People, it stimulates something interesting. I don't necessarily agree that it's CCP's job to create as stable of a system as possible.
Well, one of the things with our industry that CCP doesn't really look at from when I look at CSM minutes, when I look at their quarterly reports, is they just see how much is produced, how much is destroyed, how much is mined. They don't see people like I have seen one person run 80 barges. I have known people that have 100 accounts, three characters each, manufacturing away in their own citadel, where they just feed freighter trains to it.
Right. Yeah.
And outside of gankers, you don't see people running lots and lots of alts in one man fights like the incursion multi boxers used to do before input got banned.
You don't? I mean,
No,
there's
I mean,
there's a guy who multi boxes 11 golems in Pochvin. Like I'm kind of I don't know if I necessarily agree with that.
yeah, I've heard of people doing like multiple golems and level 4 missions with auto target missiles. I've got a local ganker who's gone from 3 gank accounts and a scout to 6 accounts and a scout. Uh, I know a bunch of the gankers on the way to Jita. They're running 20, 30 accounts. Uh,
Is people running a bunch of alts a sign of success?
Uh, I view us running heavy alts as a societal problem because I'm a
Okay,
single account. I'm a single account person.
got it.
It is a lot of work that that if I need to get someone's help, I gotta pull them away from what they're doing to get their help if I need to do something.
I agree that we need more better tools to be able to integrate with each other. Like industry is a really like especially this slightly more complicated industry is a really good thing for a group to work together on. So that way different people can do different parts of the, the process. And yet there's zero tools to actually manage a group project in game.
Yeah, that's agreed. When I was in that Mimitar Corp, I was trying to organize us building our corporation Finrir, and have a corporation freighter. And we had so many mixed signals because I had all the skills to build one. We had so many mixed signals on the resources where people were on components and stuff like that. The
Right.
CEO just took everything and went and bought one.
Yeah, exactly. Like it should be fun to do that stuff, but far too often it just defaults to fuck it, I'm just going to buy it. Yeah, I agree with that. Like I really wish that there was like we've made complex systems for industry, but they're all using external tools.
Exactly.
All right. So we can definitely agree on that. And I think that I understand what you're saying because, like, if they're going to make it more complex without giving us better tools, that is actually making it a pretty serious barrier to entry rather than making it into a creative process, which makes it so that now it's needlessly expensive because there's people that would like to do it but aren't doing it because of the barrier to entry.
Right. You have to know what third party tools that you need to use, that you want to use.
They have
You
to be
have to get
maintained.
everyone on that same page.
Yeah, I agree with you. No, I agree with you, and that's a pretty big one. All right, man. I've avoided it long enough. Let's talk about microtransactions.
Yeah.
All right, so let's set the stage a little bit. In I've become a big proponent of Josh Strife Hayes' philosophy on this, in the fact that like you have free to play games and you have subscription games, focus games. The more free to play it is, the more, and by free to play, it's like the more you can access everything without paying for it. It is the more that game company must utilize microtransactions, which ends up incentivizing them to like basically give you problems and then sell you the solutions to them, right? Whereas when it comes to a subscription model, they are encouraged to make people want to sub and continue to sub as their primary income, right? Which seems like that would make it that they want to make as interesting and as good of a game as possible. With
Right.
that said, or with all that said, it's also true that game development is extremely expensive, far more expensive than any player of games is comfortably willing to not anybody, but the vast majority of players are comfortably willing to pay. However, there are also people who are willing to pay far more than everyone else in order to make sure that their hobby is maintained and to give their support, and also to like, if they can have some sort of power fantasy or customize or whatever it is that they do, right? So microtransactions ends up being a really good way for people who want to invest deeper into their hobby to be able to do so, and thus subsidize the people who can't necessarily pay for that. So that's the I guess the baseline of the discussion. So talk to me about why you've put microtransactions not only as like you're okay with microtransactions, but you put that as literally your first bullet point and gave yourself a 5.
Actually, I am completely and totally against microtransactions.
Oh,
However, yes. However, CCP is going to do what CCP wants, even if we say no. If we have the CSM and CCP actually announces a microtransaction like the Retriever, all of CSM could go, no, that's stupid, that's a bad idea. CCP will go, well, the CSM really didn't have any input, so this is our new ship package. They have already announced that not only are they going to do more ship packages, but they're going to make a program that's aimed at new players, but they're going to have a meeting every 3 months with the CSM. In which case, most of the CSM that I probably already can predict will say no. But if we have it, the problem with I see with Eve is if we're a subscription-based game, why are our microtransactions costing so much?
Well, so here's the thing about that. I think that the heraldry and interbus system, or interbus points, is kind of the key to that whole puzzle. Everybody I've talked to about this, even when I've tried to frame it in a negative light, like, yes, selling the retriever pack was terrible, but not because selling a retriever is terrible, but making a retriever out of magic is terrible. And therefore,
Yes,
the system of people manufacturing the stuff and turning it in so that way CCP can then turn around and sell it ends up solving the problem for a lot of people.
if you did the math on the retriever package, it was actually more cost effective to buy Plex and go and buy all the parts, the skills.
So,
The what you were paying for the retriever pack was the convenience,
and the knowledge,
and that cost you more.
and the comfort.
Yeah, you could redeem it anywhere.
Well, no.
With the mic.
So this goes back to like the destroyer pack, right? So what CCP has discovered, and this is just true in general in like the gaming sphere, is that like, you know, if you can get somebody to commit to buying something, then that like the chances of them staying in and being committed and buying more is higher. But specifically in this case, the problem is that if you give a new player the Plex, they don't actually know, they're not comfortable with the ability to turn that into a fit retriever. And so it's the fact that they're able to buy the solution to their problem, and then they have it there, and they could even look at it, and they can see what it is, and they can make improvements to it. And when they lose it, they have a record of it. So now they, not only have you given them a retriever, you've given them the skills to use the retriever, but now they also understand what a retriever looks like. And what they've shown, at least with the destroyer pack, was that not only people that buy that destroyer pack, even though it is objectively a bad deal when it comes to like cash for product, people that buy the destroyer pack end up not only being satisfied with that purchase, but have a significantly higher chance of staying in the game full stop, because they are no longer having that fitting issue as a barrier to entry. I've suggested that this is a good sign that CCP should teach people how to fit their freaking ships. But I mean, as a stopgap, that's the real reason why they want to sell fit ships.
Well, they think by selling the ships they'll keep more new players. I mean, what my group does, I've even done where new players have gotten to where they can fly a barge. They come out, they mine with me, I give them the barge, and they mine the ore to pay me for the barge, basically, out there in the field. I teach them how to fit the barge better, and there's no reason why, when it comes to new players, corporations have always been willing to take in those new players and show them the ropes, show them how to fit. I sit in the help channels, and I will see atrocious fits by people that aren't being shown anything, and it's like, this is how you want to tank for a mission. You need repair. You went into a mission with no repair, and you're wondering why it's scrap. You need the ability to stay.
Well, that's kind of what the point of what I just said, right? Like, a new player doesn't feel comfortable with their own knowledge to do it right. They may not be comfortable asking other people, either because they don't trust other people because they've heard about Eve, or they don't want to be a burden and they feel like they need to learn the game before they can join a clan. This is a very common thing that I've seen. So, you know, without contacting anybody, they may just try to figure it out on their own, which ends up being a big problem. So giving them a neutral solution that allows them to, like, that anybody can see and go after, like, I assume that for every one person that you deal with, there's probably 10 or more people that never manage to contact anybody besides maybe a guy ganking them the entire time that they're playing, right? So, to that end, I see it as being potentially valuable in that regard. But I also agree that if you're going to do that, then making it diegetic and giving it a an extra padding of currency in order to make it so that we're not literally selling ships, we're not RMTing, then I think that if you're going to do that, this is the correct way to do it. Would you agree at least with that?
Yeah, what we need to do with the microtransactions on like the ship packs for the ships that we are going to put out, because we can't do anything about it. We need to have good fits. The retriever pack was not a good fit. It was, and it became a very big target of gankers when the ship pack was released. I know many gankers that they turned their whole situation to CCP selling retrievers. Let's find all the retrievers and kill them.
Right. Well, the fit wasn't that awful. A lot of people gave it a lot of shit because it was flexible. It didn't necessarily interpret what the person was doing, so it gave you kind of several fits in one.
That part was fine.
But that's independent from the fact that
is,
people got mad and decided to opt to gank them, right?
Yeah, the ship fit didn't cause the ganks, but the retriever did come with no tank, no rigs. It had no durability, so any ganker with 2 alts could go in and pop a retriever, and there goes your $25.
That makes sense.
Like,
well, yeah. Although the retriever wasn't the full value. You got a lot of other stuff with it. It was like maybe $4 out of that or something like that. But yes.
Yeah, you had Plex, you had an accelerator, and you had a couple other things.
You got, I think it was 1 month of Omega, and it wasn't even an accelerator. Yeah. You just now magically have all of the skills to fly a retriever.
Yeah, the SP token.
Right. It just, boop, you now can fly a retriever. Congratulations.
So what we have to do with microtransactions also, that's been proven in the past with other microtransactions like skill extractors. SP was always going to be a capsuleer made thing from skill extractors to injectors. Well, here's alpha injectors. Oh, hey, you've been inactive? Rise like a phoenix. One of the things that we need to do with the ship packs is draw a hard line on not only how these ships should be fit so that they're actually useful for anyone that might buy them. Mm-hmm. So if a new character does buy a ship, it's actually something worth flying.
Right.
But we need to keep them from that power creeping. Oh, hey, you can fly battleships now. Buy a brand new battleship for $50.
I agree with that. And I think that it would become increasingly difficult for CCP to walk down that road because, it makes sense for something that can be trained in a very short period of time and it's a relatively entry-level thing. But as soon as you start going deeper, you run into other problems besides just a power creep issue. So I'd like to think that they won't walk off that path. But it is a good point as to why we need people on the CSM to ensure that kind of thing, to help them remember the problems that would happen if they were to try to do such a thing.
Right. Like the new currency, we know that CCP now wants, after the retriever debacle, they now want to source the equipment from producers, but we don't know exactly what that new currency, what that new system is going to detail. Is it going to be worth me as a producer to sell my ship and equipment to CCP, or continue listing it for my local capsuleers to use?
It depends on if you want pretty things for your ship.
What was that one?
It depends on whether or not you want pretty things for your ship, because you purchase things for the heraldry system through that.
That depends on what's in the heraldry system. I recount the resource wars. I love the idea of resource wars. I love the idea of getting new and old guys together. But the LP store for resource wars was just not there. All the ships there
Right.
cost you more ISK and LP than you could go and buy the same ship and equipment from the market.
Yeah, volatile skins were awful. Luckily, they've fixed that now. But my point is that the heraldry system, from my understanding, nothing in the heraldry system is something that can then be sold in the game. It's like special, like you can buy for yourself special particle effects that can be used on your ships, or you can send it to your alliance and they can get alliance skins for their structures, or all that kind of stuff. So it's all cosmetic stuff that can only be purchased through interbus points.
Because it was like having custom engine trails and stuff like that.
Right. So that brings me to what I've been kind of musing over, which is that, in my opinion, it was poorly sold. But if you look at all the pieces together, I think that what CCP is doing is very encouraging, which is that the heraldry system could have been new microtransactions. Could have been. But they're not. They're explicitly not. Now, they can monetize it through selling some of the stuff that we build, but that also isn't the only way that they're going to release or give us to make interbus points, that they want to encourage us for doing things and whatnot, all kinds of different activities. So my point is that I feel like this could be seen as doubling down on the idea of a subscription model, that ultimately the value of the money that they could have gotten by selling those as microtransactions is not as much as what they can get by encouraging people to be out there doing things by the interbus points, and therefore making the game a higher quality game, therefore making people want to sub a lot more, and therefore raising the subscription model by $5, while also introducing a whole new set of things that should have been microtransactions but now aren't and are part of the game, that are part of the base game, really shows to me that CCP is doubling down on that subscription model as opposed to the free-to-play model. How do you feel about that?
I was never really much for the free-to-play model, but the fact that we want to increase the subscription cost as well as drop all these microtransactions is just really doubling down on the company income, and it's alienating parts of the community as far as pro microtransaction, anti-transaction goes.
Because new bros can buy ships?
Well, it's just not new bros. If like the new bros, they need good fit ships, but they also, the microtransaction price should not be so high, since you're also having to pay $20 a month to play a game. You pay $20 a month to play, and then you also got to pay $25 for a ship pack.
Well, again, that $25 included, most of the time these things are packages, so you get like a month of Plex, or a month of Omega plus some extra stuff. So,
which I had some people in the help channel recently who bought their ship pack, and they were highly upset that it was a recurring cost for subscription on that.
I'm sorry, what?
I had some people in the help channels, they found out that their credit card had been charged again because they only bought a ship pack to go Omega. They bought the receiver pack to play a month, and then when that month ended, instead of going back to Alpha, they were surprised that their credit card had been charged again.
Yeah, I definitely have heard this. Obviously, like, the idea of, well, if you pay for a subscription, then it, is a recurring fee unless you tell them not to, is kind of a normal thing. But at the same time, that does make things kind of a little bit awkward when it comes to these bundles that are sold on something other than the fact that it is a subscription, or maybe it should have a little warning flag that says that this activates, a little asterisk, disclaimer that says that this will begin, or this counts as subscribing to the game. But I mean, all that considered, I'm confused. Let's go back to the beginning. You're level 5 in microtransactions, but you're against microtransactions.
Right, because it's a hot topic for me.
Got it. So what do you think is the correct answer? Like, we've talked about a lot of stuff. I wanted to update you with some of the nuance. With all that said, what do you feel is the right thing to advocate for when it comes to the monetization of EVE Online?
I remember back at Monocle Gate of them trying to sell the Monocle for $50, and Vegas, what? You guys don't have expensive pants?
$60 pants, yes.
Yeah. We need to have price restrictions that actually make microtransactions of, yeah, I'll buy that for that price,
Right.
and not such a high price that it's better just to get other stuff. We have a community for a reason and a lot of stuff. And the most we can do if we don't agree with transactions is say, this is this pack. This is what this pack entails. This is why it was set up. But, if you don't want to, you don't have to buy it. You do not have to buy this pack.
Right. I mean, I don't think that you have to buy many of the deals that they give.
I know a lot of people that bought the Retriever simply because they thought it was a good deal to get a Retriever for $25 and a 1 month subscription.
Right. I mean, it wasn't necessarily a bad deal, especially if you needed the skills. But I mean, I can understand how people would make a bad evaluation of it. But stating it like saying that it's necessary to buy one of those packs.
There are people that do think that because they see this pack. I recently got asked about the Retriever pack because it popped up on a New Bros account. They just joined the game. They got in 2 days, and they were asking questions about the Retriever pack because they were given a 25%, 28% discount on the pack.
Right.
So he felt that it would be best to that it would be easiest for him to buy that pack instead of integrating with the society and a community where we can teach them more about that. He later died in that same Retriever with no tank.
Right. But how do you know this happened?
Being in the help chat communities.
Right.
And
so this happened to him, and then he reached out, right?
He reached out before buying the pack.
Oh.
Because when he clicked on the offer, it just took to a purchase page. It didn't say anything about what was in the pack.
Right.
So he was like, I'm getting this 28% discount. What's in it? Well, it has a Retriever. It's got the ore harvesters, ice harvesters, gas harvesters. Mm-hmm. It's got upgrades for the ore and the ice. It's got a scanner. It comes with Omega Time. And he's like, oh, that sounds like a good deal. And it's like, is mining something you want to do? Because then if you want to do mining, if you absolutely think that's the best case, being alone and mining, you can buy that pack. There's plenty of communities of us that are miners, and we take in other miners, and we'll show you how to best mine. And he decided, many new players I see are, well, I don't have all the knowledge, I don't have time in the game right now, so I'll just stay by myself instead of joining someone, and I'll get this pack. And later that afternoon, he was dead.
Right. So, first of all, we are getting to the end of our time, so this is kind of the 10-minute warning, but I'm happy to continue to talk about microtransactions if you are.
I'm ready to go to the next topic, or you can go to whatever topic.
Well, no, I mean, like, we're getting to the end of the line, so is there anything that you feel still needs to be gone over that I've missed?
I don't think we've missed much.
Okay.
Like, I've got points about addressing the Citadel stuff, because the POS system was far more robust in terms of warding off attack. Since the Citadel changes, my community has been in now a 1 month long war against 3 to 5 different groups.
The Citadel changes. You mean the latest structure changes where medium structures now only have one timer?
Yep.
Okay.
In fact, we just had a big fight in Onga in one of our nearby systems over one of our citadels today. Uh, 3 corporations are banding against us, and they're bringing far more than what we can hope. One of our fights involved 3 corporations composed of 72 pilots versus a fleet of 20 of us.
Wouldn't there be people that just takes that sentence out of context, since the changes, we've been in a war for the last month, and see that as a good thing? I mean, like, if the point of the changes was to initiate more conflict, it sounds like it was successful, right?
It opened a doorway to a lot of griefer corporations that run through high sec, which has always been in high sec, looking for easy destruction.
Right,
It
but
became
only
it
people that
became a
put up,
lot.
you got to put up the structure, right? Like, otherwise you're immune to vortex.
Yeah, which we have a whole slew of structures ranging all over the area, and it's those that are getting attacked. We're sending response fleets, and sometimes it's just not enough, even with allies.
I mean, I agree with that, but I mean, like, conflict isn't nice, isn't great for at least one person usually. But like, the idea is that, like, how do you spur more conflict without it being seen as a negative to the people who are being attacked?
These groups are reinforcing our stations within an hour before we can even respond.
Within an hour of the vortex starting?
When No, no. Once we get word that someone is attacking a station, by the time anything is assembled, they're already done. They're gone
What space is this
because
in?
there's Empire Space and Mimitar.
HiSec?
Yep.
You have 24 hours before the warning's active, right?
Yeah, for the war deck.
Right.
But you don't know what station they're going to attack, and when they do attack, it's, hey, this station's under attack. We need to get a group. By the time that fleet is assembled, where's all the war targets? Well, the station's been reinforced and they're gone.
Right. Which is why you have a timer.
Right. We got one 4.5 day timer plus or minus 3 hours.
Right. And you can also knock over their headquarters.
Right. If we can get to that.
Correct. Okay. So what would you say to people that would tell you that you got to be able to defend it if you're going to want to have it?
It's not that we're not trying to defend it. I think it should take longer before reinforcing because the structure update removed what you need for shields for a damage cap.
Right.
So your shields just get wiped out, and then you hope you got the people together there for the armor and hull. And
the timer.
we fight. I mean, we fight. We're a bunch of Care Bears fighting.
Yeah.
But
I appreciate that. But so what I'm hearing is that really the biggest problem here is that the shields are too easy to strip away.
Yeah.
And I believe that there's a lot of wormholers that would agree with you on that. So I think that is actually something that you could, like, that is a very uncontroversial position to have at this point, I would say.
Yeah, the wormholers have it bad because I don't recall seeing a pullback on the wormhole guys on their like less than 40 hours of reinforced timer.
Yeah, no, it's kind of nuts. Well, I mean, there's a complication there because the original timer was based on how long a POS would last, which is what they used to use. But that's one of the things I've talked to several of the wormhole candidates about because it is a very complex issue. But the reason why I bring that up is just because you're echoing the exact same thing, which tells me that re-looking at the shield timer specifically might fix several issues that may seem unrelated. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it might seem like this is a war deck issue and that's a wormhole issue, but they're really just shields are too easy to strip away. The structure doesn't defend itself, kind of situation.
Right. The most players I talk to is like, oh well, you have a medium structure, it's fodder. If you can't defend it, just let it get blown up.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. That's why that was why I asked the question, because there are a lot of people whose position would just simply be, well, you obviously can't, you couldn't defend it, so, somebody's going to knock it over.
Right, and it's kind of the same deal. I also want to represent our subscription costs. Where I live, a subscription is now 2/3 of a day of work.
Right. That's, I
Uh,
mean, right, because the prices weren't localized.
right.
They said they're going
Uh,
to do that soon, but they have been notoriously bad about that over throughout their whole history.
yeah, and I actually have people asking me about this. It's like, can you represent us? I'm a teacher over in this country, and I make $500 a month. My wife is a pilot. She makes $600 a month. I am a
Right.
technician. I'm a technician and a business owner. I make $1,000 a month. That's only $33 a day if you divide it down by 30.
Well, good news, you don't
So
have to pay to play the game.
I know, right? Luckily, I am set up for that so that I myself can go over to Plex so I can keep my Omega. But there are other people that are like, well, I can't continue paying. I don't do anything to make Omega. I've got a guy right now who he's in America. He just lost a lot of business due to COVID and recession,
Right.
and now he's going, I can't pay for my Omega next month. And I'm like, well, focus on one thing, get really good at that one thing. We can make you Omega.
Well, what about Alpha, right? Like they could go back to Alpha and then like even if it takes 2 months for them to earn Omega again, you can build it up over time because they don't have a cost. As long as they're out there doing stuff as an Omega, they can make money, especially if, like faction warfare or Abyss or exploration or things that Omegas can or Alphas can do.
Yeah, the thing with Alpha 2 is I see a lot of alphas in our help chats because they're like, well, I want to be a better miner. What does it take? Well,
Right.
mining barges, but you have to be Omega.
Yeah.
Well, that's paywalled. I have seen lots of alphas that believe that because you have to pay to go Omega and fly something better, that Eve is pay to win or is paywalled. Everything is behind a paywall.
Right.
And
Well, but not every production and resource harvesting are largely behind paywalls, but destruction and combat are not.
well, level 4 missions are.
That's fair, but level 3 missions aren't.
Right. In a day of level 3 missions, I can make about 50 million. Uh, if they wanted to actually get with a large fleet, they could go do incursions. Uh, if they wanted to do small fleet stuff, they could get two other guys in frigs and go do abyssals.
Right.
So there's options, but it comes down to, well, I don't want to do that. It's just, so it's like these guys that, oh, I want to be mining,
Right.
but I want a mining barge, but why do I have to pay? Well, you
Because we
have to
can't
pay
have everybody
because
with free accounts mining that
right,
scale.
right. The reason for alphas initially was to fight, to
Right.
be cannon fodder for the. They were to be cannon fodder for the groups. They were to be out there on the front lines fighting, not farming this, not creating. And
How
ever
many of these
since we,
how many of these people do you think actually want to mine because they know what it is and they want to do it, or are they wanting to mine because they think that that's just where they need to get started?
I know a lot of people that they come into the game and they want to mine because they play other MMOs and they want to craft. They want to craft stuff.
Right.
And I have taken groups in and I have taught them how to craft. At one point, I had a group that was doing orcas, And an orca at the time was costing 2.1 billion to make, way back at the start of the industry changes, and they were selling them for 1.8 billion. And I'm like, you guys are doing this all wrong. You're actually losing 300 million instead of selling the material. This is how you need to streamline. Uh, the alphas are extremely limited in something like industry. So they have anomalies, they have cosmic anomalies, they have all these other sources where they can get some money really fast. But I don't want to do that. I want to mine. And then my only response is, if you really want more, you need to join a fleet. We can hook you up with a mining battleship to where you'll mine a little bit better than a venture, but at least it's more. And
My understanding is
you're with a
Praxis
fleet of
can
guys
mine pretty darn good.
Oh, I've committed sins. I've even got the attack battle cruisers. I got a set of attack battle cruisers that's set to run 8 mining lasers. It's real click and drag. You'll be next to the orca the whole time, but you'll be running for 50, 60 million ISK. You'll have 8 miners running.
Right. So we should probably be wrapping this up. But I will say that this has been a really awesome discussion. I said at the outset that I liked your character, but I questioned some of the things that some of the positions that you had. Obviously, I've been kind of more adversarial, I guess, more critical than I have with other interviews. But I think that what we've seen here is your ability to remain level-headed. Like, you've demonstrated that exact thing that we were just talking about, right? Where your ability to communicate and persuade without, in a world in which you don't have the power, but you do have the knowledge, right? And to that end, or actually coincidentally, a lot of the things that we've disagreed with at this point are things that I feel stem from you not being aware of all of the details about things, which is not your fault, given the fact that a lot of this stuff is new, and a lot of it was done in like the keynote and other videos and stuff like that, which a person with a low internet connection would have difficulty staying up with all that stuff. However, somebody on the CSM that is actually communicating, coordinating with CCP on stuff, would have that information at their disposal in a much easier to access format for someone like you. And I think that what we've demonstrated is that with the knowledge, you were able to process it very quickly. You're able to understand the nuance. You're able to continue to defend what points you felt were necessary to be defending, which means that overall, I feel like you have demonstrated the ability to be a very effective CSM member in representing your points and helping CCP, maybe pushing back enough, maybe not necessarily to stop the thing, but to make us think about it complexly enough to do it right. It doesn't sound like you want to necessarily tell them, no, don't do any of these things. But it's like, man, we got to really focus on these problems. And with CCP having a long and glorious history of having great ideas and terrible execution, I feel like that skill set is something that is incredibly valuable to have on the CSM right now, more than just having like the answer to bring to CCP. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, completely agree, because we cannot give or take anything without giving or taking from something else.
Right.
All options have to be looked at from every point of view.
I do want to ask a couple. I'm going to go long. I don't care. Whatever. Going back to the microtransaction thing, do you feel like the fact that people make uninformed decisions is reason enough for us to not make those sales? You're talking about people that bought the retriever pack. Now, I admitted that like it'd be awesome if there was an asterisk or a thing that said like, hey, by the way, this is going to start a subscription or whatever. But like, CCP didn't promise that ship wasn't going to get blown up. The idea that they made a bad personal decision. There are other people that bought the retriever pack and had a great time with it. So should those anecdotes be enough for us to say that they should not make these kinds of things just because people might buy them under false pretenses? I mean, I'm sure somebody paid $250 for the Black Ops battle pack and didn't realize. Actually, I heard a story just the other day about somebody buying the Black Ops battle pack for $255 and then realizing that it didn't actually give them the ability to fly a Black Ops.
Yeah.
But does that mean that we shouldn't have that pack in at all?
I feel the Retriever should have been fitted better as far as the mid slots and rigs go. It should have been more detailed to the buyer as to what exactly it is. What exactly are they getting? Not just saying, oh, well, this is a mining barge for you to go out and mine. Detail what the product is. That because people
I
are
agree
coming
that,
in
like
the whole time.
a video release for it that explains
That would be perfect.
like Concord, like this is what I've been envisioning. Like I said, diegetically make this happen. You know, Concords or Interbus or whoever's making an initiative. Therefore, we there's this whole process where we put together the fits and we turn in the stuff for the fits and all that stuff, and then they present that to the player to the new bro community, as it were, as like, you know, this is how to buy it, and hopefully it comes with like a guide or, you know, all that kind of stuff. So more context is the issue, not necessarily the pack itself. Would that be fair?
Yeah, that would be great because we just need to detail that. We need to get if the sales are going to be pushed to new players like CCP says they want, we need those players to be informed as to what this pack is, what does it contain, what is it based around, what activity, how can they best use it.
Right. My issue, so the problem here is that like normally you would just be like, you know, 30-day money back guarantee or something like that, right? So that way if you don't like the purchase or whatever. But the problem is that like things that happen in Eve happen. So
yeah,
when somebody blows up your
unlock.
retriever, you can't just be like, oh, your retriever blew up, so here's your replacement. Because A, that would be unfair to the actual sandbox, but also B, people would absolutely exploit any of those kinds of rules. So it's a really tough problem.
I have seen people blow up on the undocks. I have had to report people because I have legitimately seen new players in starting systems getting ganked mining in their ventures in
Right.
a starter system.
Yeah. I'm actually on the side of like locking safety green in newbie zones. Like if it's going to be against the rules to do that, then you shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Yeah, we should also ban duels in those type of systems too, because I ran into that problem as well. Had a 3-year character undocking in a rookie ship, spam dueling everyone, docking, pulling out of praxis and killing everyone. I had one at Travis Jack doing the SOE run, and there's a guy at Travis Jack dueling people and just killing them in Tech 2. He's in a Tech 2 ship and he's just killing new players 1 day, 2 days old that just
Right.
finished their career agent and hey, go do the SOE.
I don't mind that nearly as much because so somebody who gets ganked, there's not a lot of feedback. They may not even understand what happened to them. They don't feel like they've opted into it, even though, you know, you consented a PvP by undocking, blah blah blah. But like you really are consenting to PvP when you accept a duel, right? You may not understand that they can kill you. You may not be able to understand that they unshipped, but like
That is a big problem.
but the difference is
But
that
the high sec is supposed to be
but
safe.
well, my point is that when that is over and done with, that person can look at it and be like, oh, accepting the duel was a mistake. Whereas in the other case, the person goes, oh, undocking a ship is a mistake. You understand how that's like a different message, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But I mean, the bottom line is that this is all very complicated stuff. There is no easy solution to it. There is two sides to every coin. And again, one of the things I appreciate is regardless of the positions that you have, you really seem interested in engaging in that both sides of the coin aspect of things. You understand that, like, it's funny because I pushed back earlier about your idea of the word neutral or balanced or unbiased, but it really does feel like you at least acknowledge the fact and accept the fact that there is another side to every given thing, right? Anything that's good for somebody in Eve is bad for another person that's Eve, and vice versa. Well, one person's inconvenience is another person's opportunity. So, yeah, I think this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you coming by. It's been lots of fun.
Yeah, it has. I've enjoyed the conversation because when you're discussing points like this, you definitely need feedback
Right.
because that feedback is what lets you see the multiple other views. Even in our chat here, some other people have different views, like how the dual system should work. Like
Right.
one guy is saying, in a rookie system, dual should be auto off.
There is there are out of the box solutions to the problem. Like, for instance, what if to accept in a duel you have to turn your safety to yellow? Right?
Right, I could see that one.
You know, in the same way that like using it to go to null, something that's inherently dangerous, you have to set it to yellow first. So like it's a good way of like when you go to accept it, it goes, you can't do that without turning your safety to yellow. And you're like, oh, this is something different than everything else. This is going to make me exposed in a way that everything else hasn't so far. You could even extend that to going a lot of these things that have warnings, like going into low sec. What if low sec says, you know, that you can't do it while in safety green? That actually might be an interesting idea, but a rabbit hole that we don't have time to go into right now. But yeah, I think that you've been in this game for a long time. You've seen a lot. You carry a lot of knowledge with you, and I really appreciate you coming here and chatting with this stuff. Either way, I do think that you'd be an effective CSM member, but I also really just appreciate this conversation.
Oh yeah, just look me up anytime. I'll have a conversation.
Absolutely, and you know, same to you. If you see something that you want to, if I make a video or you want to push back or you want to chat about it, just let me know and we'll work something out. But
yeah, absolutely.
I think that should just about wrap it up for us. Thank you once again, Agondray, for coming. Thank you all for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe before you go, if you haven't already. And if you have any questions for Agondray, you can either put it in the comments below of the YouTube video or in the doobly-doo. There is a link to his forum post where you can post there. He obviously has some really good insights and is willing to engage with those kinds of things. So I definitely encourage that. But if you're watching this on the playlist, then you can just go ahead and sit back. We're about to go on to the next video. But either way, thank you guys for coming and checking this out, because this is what it takes to become an informed electorate. This is something that we all must do together. It is work. It is work for me to do these interviews, and it's work for you to watch these interviews. But it's necessary work, because we can have a good CSM or we can have a bad CSM. And ultimately, CCP is going to do what they're going to do. It is our tool to have. It is our tool to make good. It is our tool to neglect. And I'm a firm believer that the more we work to make the CSM great, the better it will be for us in general, both the CSM and our relationship with CCP. So thank you all for participating in all of this. And on behalf of Agondray and myself, Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, thank you all for watching. And until next time, I'll see you in space.